has kept a lot of his control package intact. Usually what they've been sacrificing for the life-bane zombies is they sacrifice some amount of removal spells. You know, they'll cut down on a putrefy, they might cut down on an abrupt decay or on tragic slips. We see Mancuso with no tragic slips, but he still has, or sorry, he does have 2 tragic slips.
Right.
But
he's cut down on a Garrick, he's cut down on a bonfire.
Yeah, so he has fewer bonfires. I don't know if I see any of the bonfires in his deck.
No, he has
2.
Looks
okay,
like he has
3.
Well, I can't tell if that's a 2 or 3 actually.
Okay.
We don't have the nicest handwriting on the deck list, does Mr. Mancuso, who it was on the play and led off with a Farseek, as well as a basic forest. Now he's got 2 basic forests and a swamp in his deck.
Yeah. So that I think. What that gives him is the ability to Farseek. Well, the forest is interesting because you can't actually Farseek for the forest. The basic forest is kind of just going to mize every once in a while.
Yeah.
But with a forest and swamp, he can play... Well, what it lets him do is it lets him play a Golgari Charm under Burning Earth, which maybe he finds, that can be pretty helpful for him.
Absolutely. It also lets him play a Thragtusk and still gain 3 life if he has all 3 of his basics in play, kind of thing. So it lets him have a little bit more play in that metagame. Both of these players clearly aware that Burning Earth is a card in the metagame, with 4 Golgari Charms in Adam Mancuso's sideboard.
That's a huge number of Golgari Charms.
That is an enormous number of Golgari Charms, in addition to 2 Ratchet Bombs, which are sometimes, worst comes to worst, an answer that you have to have if you're facing down a Burning Earth.
Yeah, so we see no early plays here. Actually, it looks like Adam Mancuso, he miracled a Bonfire of the Damned. He's just going to use it as a shock to the face when he draws it there.
I like that. I think that it's not going to pick up any value in this matchup.
Yeah.
And so just using it for the maximum amount that he could then, plus he doesn't have any other plays.
Yeah, it really depends what he wants to cast instead. If he's doing that instead of playing, a Hunt Master, maybe he wants to play the Hunt Master, but that's a fine play still.
Absolutely. Thomas Johnson is deciding whether or not this Huntmaster is going to get countered. Adam has 4 copies of Huntmaster in his deck. Thomas has 4 counter spells, and one of them is one of his 3 Syncopates. He also has, he has 5 total. It looks like 1 Essence Scatter and 1 Dissipate.
Yeah, so for a straight blue-white control deck, 5 is still a pretty small number. What that means is he's going to want to, whenever possible, reserve those counter spells, those Syncopates and Dissipates, for the non-creature spells. He's going to use his sweepers on the creature spells. He needs to make sure that things like Garruk Primal Hunter and Rakdos' Return do not resolve. And with such a small number of counter spells, Adam's probably pretty happy to draw a Syncopate out with something like a Huntmaster.
So Thomas played an Augur of Bolas as a Bane Alley Blackguard, whiffing entirely. Tomas is going to use, was that an Essence Scatter?
Yep, it was the Essence Scatter.
The Essence Scatter to counter Thragtusk for Adam. That's 2 counter spells down. How many more does he have?
Yeah, but he should be pretty happy with that one. This is going to set up a really good board for Thomas. He's going to use Jace Memory Adept. No, but he got the creature counterspell on a creature. So
yes.
that means that he doesn't have to use his universal counterspells to counter something like Thragtusk.
So immediately to the dome with Jace Memory Adept.
Yeah. Now the question is, that may have been a little hasty of him. If Adam has an untapped land, Adam will be able to Rakdos Return and kill the Jace. Sometimes if Thomas pluses the Jace there, he then ensures the Jace is going to live.
Yep.
As a result, I think he's safe because I don't think Adam hit land number 6.
Yep, he didn't. He's stuck on 5, so that Jace is going to survive. Adam, it looks like, is going to resolve a Thragtusk.
Yeah, the Thragtusk resolving here is good for him, but because Thomas has this Chump Blocker and Augur Bolas and the Jace, he still has a lot of options here to... Remember, he only has to protect the Jace for so many turns.
The clock quickly ticking down, as 10 a turn is a lot, especially when you start at 60. Thomas has an Azorius Charm among other options in his hand.
Yeah, Azorius Charm's going to be really helpful. We see that Mancuso does have an Abrupt Decay, which can take care of the Augur Bolas. Well, barring a Restoration, it can take care of the Augur Bolas. But...
Yep. Blind Obedience coming down for Thomas Johnson, mostly in the deck to deal with hasty animals out of the red-green deck, and sometimes out of Jund. You'll see occasional Thundermaw Hellkites pop up here and there, but for the most part, that's for the red-green deck.
Yeah, that card is really not very strong in this matchup, as there are no real hasters out of Jund. Also, the incremental life damage isn't going to do much of anything.
So Adam gets another Miracle Bonfire. This one is actually going to be pretty good, though, being able to take out Augur of Bolas and Jace Memory Adept after milling 20 cards.
Yeah, Thomas dug for a counterspell there and missed on it. And I think, once again, that was the penalty of not first plussing the Jace. If he plusses the Jace, he can get out of range of that Miracle Bonfire, he can get out of range of that Rakdos' return. Now he's going to have to re-establish control.
Yep, and he was unable to use the Extort from the Blind Obedience when he drew off of that Think Twice, so he was not able to get any incidental value off of it, as he is able to now resolve Tamiyo the Moon Sage, equally powerful Planeswalker.
Yeah.
Adam's going to take a read of Tamiyo, and so will we, I do believe. And so Tamiyo is a mythic planeswalker from Avacyn Restored. Saw a little bit of play right when Avacyn Restored, or right when Return to Ravnica first came out, actually, in the blue-white-red control deck that Todd Anderson won and opened with.
Yeah, well, what's really nice about Tamiyo is as these blue-white control decks move toward having more board sweepers, Tamiyo becomes a more powerful card. Her +1 ability allows her to tap down one creature, which really forces opponents to continue to commit to the board and then overextend into the Wrath.
Yep. Tamiyo also picking up a lot of value now that most of the Junk Aristocrats style cards aren't seeing play anymore. When you have something like Cartel Aristocrat being able to sacrifice anything that gets targeted or gain protection from the Tamiyo, it loses a lot of value. Thomas Johnson reveals a Supreme Verdict to the Lifebane zombie that has resolved for Adam Mancuso. That Lifebane zombie comes into play tapped, of course, because of the Blind Obedience.
Yeah, so Johnson's going to have to verdict at some point here. We may see the verdict come out now. His Tamiyo is going to actually stay around for a while. The one concern he has is that Tamiyo doesn't exactly win the game on her own. If she makes an emblem, that does win the game. The thing is that with all, especially game one, when Adam still has all this burn, these cards like Bonfire, and as we know in his hand, Rakdos' return, he can usually keep the Tamiyo off an emblem. So the Tamiyo really just buys time until Thomas hits a more definitive answer.
Abrupt Decay not going to have a ton of targets against Thomas Johnson's deck, so it's going to hit the Blind Obedience while it can.
Yeah, and that's an interesting choice. I mean, he probably just thinks the card's dead, so he's using it while he can. That said, it might be better just to be saved for an Augur Bolus, or actually what we do know is that Thomas is main decking Detention Spheres. That's easily the best use of the card.
Yeah, 2 copies of Detention Sphere in Thomas's deck, and but Jund is so good at top decking that it's going to be tough to be able to keep up in terms of just top decking, as Rakdos' Return takes out its natural prey, Sphinx's Revelation,
Yeah.
as well as dealing 4 damage to Tamiyo.
That's a pretty big hit for Mancuso. He still is in a tough spot here, as he has no hand, a board with 1 tapped down creature. But that was that kept him in the game. If that's Revelation resolved, he's in a lot of trouble.
But if there's one deck that has that wants to be in top deck battles, it's Jund.
Yeah.
And as we see right off the top, there's Huntmaster of the Fells. Thomas Johnson is going to have to dig with his Think Twice.
Looking for maybe that Dissipate. I don't think he hit it there. So the Huntmaster will likely resolve. Remember, he does have a fair amount of sweepers with a card like Detention Sphere is not a sweeper here, but he does have a full set of Supreme Verdicts. So that'll help. That'll give him some extra
Absolutely.
reach here.
He also has a pair of Jace Memory Adept, one of which he's used already. That can sort of help dig and also prevent some damage to his life total if he doesn't want to go straight to the dome with it. So there, he's also got a Restoration Angel, which is very good against Huntmaster of the Fells, being able to ambush mid-combat and prevent Adam from flipping it if Adam tries to flip it by just simply passing his turn 1 turn.
Restoration Angel is interesting here. It can maybe save his Tamiyo. It'll be pretty close because that Huntmaster flip plus the 2 damage that gets through is actually still enough to take down the Tamiyo. But I would say, yeah, Restoration Angel is certainly one of the cards he's looking for right now.
So Tamiyo is going to keep that Todd Anderson locked down, leaving with Adam Mancuso with only the Wolf and the Wolf Friend there. Here's another glance to see if it's a miracle.
Is it the 3rd Bonfire? Maybe.
We've hit 2 already. A little sly grin from Adam there. Of course, the Reed Duke style is to look at every card as if it were a miracle.
All right, so it is the Restoration Angel. He's going, and the kill spell was not drawn by Mancuso, and that's pretty huge. Johnson's gonna be able to block, kill the Huntmaster. The Tamiyo goes down to 2, but it looks like it's gonna survive this fight.
Yep. Pretty nonchalant block from Thomas Johnson there.
Yeah, we said before, Jund a great top decking deck. Probably the only deck that gives us a run for its money is the Sphinx's Revelation deck.
That's true.
The fact that Mancuso doesn't have, say, a Kessig Wolf run here is really important because that's one of the few cards like Blue-White Control has a lot of trouble dealing with. Say Mancuso had a Wolf from there, the Tamiyo would have died, for example.
It looks like Adam's last draw was a land that he kept in hand, feigning a elimination spell. This time around, it looks like he has a spell that he wants to cast, and it is another Huntmaster.
Yeah, so he's going to go for that Huntmaster of the Fells. That's going to put a lot of pressure on that Tamiyo again, but he's really, he's about one Wrath away from being shut down here.
Yep.
Or certainly one Revelation away. And what I like about Johnson's deck, he's playing the full four Sphinx's Revelations. A lot of these control decks go down to 3. I like how it's just, this is his win con. He wants one all the time.
Well, now that we've taken all of the excess red chaff out of the deck, as it were, we can afford to play the full 4 Supreme Verdicts, the full 4 Revelations, and really go much harder into a control strategy.
Yeah, we actually even see post-board, he boards in, he has a potential of 2 more Terminus, a Detention Sphere, even more sweepers are available to him.
Yep. And so it looks like Tomas used one of those Sphinx's Revelations, or just used a bunch of Think Twice.
I think there's a bunch of Think Twices on end step there.
He's got a whole mess of lands in play, as you can see there.
Yeah, and this is exactly where the control deck wants to be. He hasn't resolved the Revelation yet, but to be honest, at 15 life, he doesn't really need to. Think Twice is almost as efficient of a card drawer as Sphinx's Revelation is. Revelation's better because of the life gain, but when you're at 15, that's not actually as important.
He does instead find the second copy of Jace Memory Adept off of the top.
Yeah, well, that will give him a win con for sure. And actually an important win con. Without that, he actually has to swing with Restoration Angels, of which he only plays 3. That's his only other way to win.
Yeah, that's a long way to go.
Right.
Now, this might be a little bit early to play this Jace Memory Adept. I might have waited to have a sweeper before I played this.
Well, what I really would want to do is make sure I had the counter spell. This is our last really good way to win the game, and if Mancuso goes for a Rakdos return, it's very possible that he loses the Jace. Also, as you said, the sweeper, Mancuso can aggro the Jace. It will cost him his Huntmaster, but the option is there.
I think that he would much rather aggro the Tamiyo, but at this point he kind of has to go after the Jace.
Right.
Because that's going to be 40 cards.
Yeah, I do believe that Thomas has an Azorius Charm in hand, so it might be that Mancuso can't actually kill the Jace here. And he's going to go ahead and put both Wolves attacking at Jace.
Interesting that the Huntmaster doesn't attack. This protects it from Azorius Charm and from the Restoration Angel block, but the Azorius Charm is now going to take out the Wolf token.
I think the plan was to have one Wolf die, have the second Wolf deal 2 to Jace, then Adam would play nothing, have the Huntmaster flip, and deal the remaining 2 damage to Jace. That plan foiled, first of all, because Thomas played a spell. Second of all, because the spell got rid of the Wolf. The Jace is still at 4.
Exactly, yeah. And so things going on all cylinders for Thomas Johnson now.
Yeah,
that's going to mill
10
all
more
but
cards.
1. And there's a Rakdos return. I think that and also a Kessig Wolf run.
Yep, that's the second Rakdos' return. It looks like Adam has fewer than 10 cards in his deck, so he's going to need to answer the Jace right now. It seems unlikely that he'll be able to do so. I imagine that Johnson will be able to close this game out.
Yep, I don't think that he's going to be able to deal 15 damage. I believe there's 1 card left.
Oh, okay,
Adam's
so he
deck.
has to deal the entirety on this turn.
He's going to have to deal all of the damage this turn.
All right, so yeah, looks through the giant stack of cards that has become Mancuso's graveyard. We see it in Johnson's hand, an Azorius Charm, a Detention Sphere. Still has a lot of options.
And it looks to me like 2 lands in Adam Mancuso's hand, so not a ton of great options. There's a Detention Sphere.
Yep, and just to pass back, what is the last card in Mancuso's deck? It does not win the game.
It is a Farseek,
Okay,
of which there are no cards left to search for.
Yeah.
So Thomas Johnson going to take game 1 over Adam Mancuso. He's playing Blue-White Control and able to defeat Jund. I imagine this isn't the first time he's faced Jund today.
Remember, we had 8 green decks in our first top 8. We actually had no Sphinx's Revelations present in the first top 8, so Thomas is trying to become the first Revelation deck to make a top 8 this weekend.
Yeah, and after Revelation was revealed to us, we certainly did not think that there would be a top 8 empty of Sphinx's Revelations for the remainder of its life in Standard, and it happened very quickly, pretty much.
Right. Yeah, Sphinx's Revelation decks, I mean, when you describe the world's metagame, you'd say, okay, there are 2 decks right now. There's Jund and Blue-White-Red Revelation.
Yep.
And we've seen, this third deck, Red-Green Aggro, being the surprise deck really coming out. Jund's still very dominant, but I think what's really notable is the lack of Revelation that we've seen at this tournament. And more interesting, it's not been blue, white, red. It's really just been, even the Revelation decks we have seen here have all been straight blue, white.
Yeah, they don't really want to mess around with Thundermaw Hellkites out of the sideboard, War Leader's Helix out of the main deck. Not really messing around with that sort of elimination. Particularly, I think that that's a response to the lack of Cartel Aristocrat decks, because you really need the targeted Pillar of Flame elimination against the smaller value creature decks like that.
Especially Voice of Resurgence has dropped in popularity a lot. And Pillar, Voice was great against these Revelation decks, and Pillar of Flame was the best answer you could have to them. Esper is actually, or straight blue-white is actually pretty soft to Voice of Resurgence. But now that card's fallen out of favor, and cards like Burning Earth have fallen into favor, it's not that surprising to see the control decks cut the red out of them.
Yep. So moving on to sideboard, I'll take a look at Thomas's deck. He's going to be on the draw real quick. He has his Snapcaster Mages in the sideboard. I believe that those are a package with this Psychic Spiral to come in against control decks to be able to prevent milling himself.
Yeah, so it's interesting he's playing the Snapcasters out of the sideboard. Usually, when you in the control mirror, you'd use the Psychic Spiral if you were already playing Snapcasters, because it costs you 1 sideboard slot and essentially gives you 4 Psychic Spirals. So that's really a low investment way to gain a lot of points in the mirror. If you're putting all 4 of the cards in the sideboard, then the question is, why aren't you just playing something like Witchbane Orb or something that's just, if these are only for the mirror, then you just play really narrow cards that are great in the mirror.
Sure.
So he's presumably wants the Snapcaster Mages in additional matchups.
I think that they're probably as also a package to bring in against Bant Hexproof with these Celestial Flares. But there are also a ton of other instants and sorceries in the sideboard: Dispel, Negate, Renounce the Guilds. You're not really planning on snapcasting a Terminus, but it is another thing you can do.
Yeah. So typically, when I've been playing a blue-white control deck, the game plan against Jund is to play as many counter spells as you possibly can. Almost no Jund decks are on Cavern of Souls, Sire of Insanity anymore. That was one of
or Sire Rurik Thar.
Just Sire anything,
Or I'm sorry, Cavern
Rurik Thar. They do sometimes play Rurik Thars. Mancuso does not.
Right.
But really, no one's playing the Caverns to go with them. So with that said, counterspells are excellent in this matchup. He has 2 Negates. Negates are great. Dispel doesn't actually do anything. There aren't very many instants out of Jund that you care about. But I expect the 2 Negates to come in. You might even see Snapcasters come in just to further increase your counterspell count.
Yeah, and he's also going to be taking out things like Blind Obedience, which are not necessarily for this matchup.
Yeah, I think as I said before, there aren't haste creatures out of Jund, and as we saw, Thomas really isn't winning with damage.
Yeah.
So both the abilities on Blind Obedience are pretty mediocre in the matchup.
Yep. I would certainly expect the Snapcasters to come in just as more ways to counter spells. And of course, other counter spells come in. Negate will certainly come in. Dispel probably not. There aren't a ton of instants that we care about out of Mancuso's Jund deck.
Yeah, there's almost none. I mean, to be fair, the only one you actually care about is Abrupt Decay, but unfortunately you can't counter it.
Yeah. You can target it, but you can't counter it. What's more interesting to me, though, is against Jund, which is a deck that you're expecting to face when you come into a Magic tournament these days.
Right.
He has a copy of Renounce the Guilds in the sideboard. Against Jund, you'd like to have Renounce the Guilds, but you also want to have your Detention Spheres.
Yeah, so Renounce the Guilds originally was good against Sire of Insanity Jund because it was a way that blue-white could still deal with Sire and not lose their entire hand. When you look at the gold cards in Jund right now, they aren't the cards, I mean, Rakdos Return is gold, it's not a permanent. There aren't actually many multicolored things that you want to get rid of. I mean, okay, Olivia, Huntmaster of the Fells.
But even those cards aren't that powerful against blue-white.
You'd rather deal with them using sweepers, because
Yes.
sweepers are just generically good in the matchup. I think Renounce might be just another card that you can play. Well, first of all, it's good against Geist of St. Traft.
Yeah.
Second of all, it's good against Dome Rerod, which is a pretty big issue for the deck.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I don't actually think it's for this matchup.
Loxodon Smiter, another gold card that this is
Naya
very
has
good at
plenty
dealing
of
with.
gold cards
Absolutely, yeah. No, certainly not for this matchup. I would anticipate the Detention Spheres staying in place and the Renounce the Guilds sitting on the sidelines. Instead, I would imagine Terminus, the additional Detention Sphere and Snapcaster Mages, and also the Negates, as you said, just as many counterspells as we could possibly get. Over on Adam's side of the board, what does he have that's interesting, pops out to you?
I'll just go through this quickly. He has 2 Underworld connections, he has 3 Liliana of the Veil, he has 2 Duress, and he has the 3rd Rakdos Return. I think any or all of those could come in.
Yep, certainly. Probably not going to bring in Golgari Charms for Game 2, although it depends on how Game 3 goes. If he manages to lose and lose because of Detention Sphere.
Yeah, if he wants to kill Detention Sphere, he'll probably use Abrupt Decays instead of the Golgari Charms to do it.
Sure. So, Adam starting off with a turn 2 Farseek. He has a basic Swamp this time around. Thomas led with a basic island.
Yeah, so Farseek, you know, typically considered part of Jun's God draw is something we say about it. Actually, in this matchup, isn't as relevant as it sometimes can be. It's obviously great to get ahead, just like with playing threats earlier, but a lot of times, especially post-board, when the blue-white control deck has a ton of counterspells, it really comes down to Adam will continue to jam threats and hope one of them doesn't get countered. Because of that, you know, it doesn't really matter how early he plays his threats, it matters how many he's going to play.
Absolutely. Augur of Bolas comes down turn 2 for Thomas Johnson, revealing Syncopate, sort of taking away a little bit of the surprise factor there. That means that Adam Mancuso looks like he's going to take this opportunity to cast his Underworld Connections.
And he'll want to get that going as soon as possible. You know, extra cards are excellent in this matchup.
Yep. At the cost of life, which of course isn't much of a cost at all, as a result of Thomas Johnson's main win condition being Jace Memory.
Yeah. So see a swing with the Augur. So Augur in this matchup, by and large, the body doesn't matter. It puts a little bit of pressure on Liliana. What it actually does is it allows your Restoration Angels to sometimes cantrip, which is probably the best thing that it does in the matchup.
Yep, absolutely. It's also going to let Adam, or let Thomas pressure Adam enough that he can't just go willy-nilly with the Underworld Connections. He's possibly going to be able to drop him down to 10, basically on just Augur attacks and Underworld activation.
To be fair, Adam will probably be just fine going to 10.
And that's fine, but at a certain point, Thomas Johnson can just be like, all right, now I need a Restoration Angel and attack with it twice.
Yeah, and well, if Adam has actually boarded out all his creature removal, then that becomes an issue. Outside of it, the thing is that Adam still has plenty of his threats, be it Thragtusk or Huntmaster or Scavenging Ooze, that just incidentally gain life.
Sure.
I don't know how easily Thomas can deal 20 in this matchup ever.
That's a fair point.
So we
see another green source for Adam Mancuso. It looks like he has at least one Farseek in his hand, in addition to a Scavenging Ooze and a Olivia Volderon.
Yeah, and I like how he's going to go for the Ooze here first. He knows that there's a Syncopate in Johnson's hand, so he's very...
So he's going to resolve that one first?
Yep, because the Syncopate for 2 is all that could happen. And he might even just play the Farseek into the Syncopate here. I think he'd be pretty happy. If Thomas spells a counterspell on the Farseek, he's got to be just overjoyed.
Yeah.
And he's going to go ahead and do it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, look at that.
Yeah, I think that's a little aggressive on Thomas. Remember, it's really this grind matchup of Adam plays threats, Thomas plays counterspells, whoever runs out first loses. Farseek is not a threat, but Syncopate is a counterspell.
Yep. And Adam even has a third Farseek in his hand, believe it or not.
Yeah, every Farseek he can get countered is a great Farseek.
Adam's deciding if he wants to Miracle here. Looks like he does indeed want to Miracle for 3 to take out that Augur of Bolas.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised to see the Bonfire in post-board. I imagine he had 3 in the main, so it's very possible he's boarded out some number of them. The card is still a fine late-game draw in that it can get those last points of damage. It actually can threaten Planeswalkers.
Right, which I think is the main reason why it's still remaining in the deck, is for being able to take down Planeswalkers that were causing Adam so much trouble in Game 1.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's a math thing of how many cards he wants to board and how many he boards out as to how many Bonfires he still has.
Adam's going to play an untapped Shockland, remove the Augur, and make the Scavenging Ooze a 3/3, while also gaining a life.
Yeah, so, well, I think, yeah, I mean, really what Thomas is going to have to do is this game is all about the Underworld Connections right now. As a blue-white control deck, you can't let your opponent be drawing more cards than you.
Yeah.
You know, you have to be the biggest card drawer around.
There's Restoration Angel at end of turn.
Yeah, Mancuso correctly played, does not swing Scavenging Ooze there. I like how he's identified that the most important thing here is Underworld Connections, that it's not about pushing damage right away.
Yeah, he just needs to get more threats than Thomas has answers, and at this point, particularly with Thomas choked on white, he does not have Supreme Verdict mana just yet.
Exactly.
He is going to Thomas is going to have to take the aggressive role here, which he's not comfortable doing.
Yeah, he does put Adam down to 13. I believe we still saw the end step Underworld Connections from Mancuso. You know, and yeah, Thomas is, like I said before, you'd said there was a chance that this would become about whether or not Thomas can deal 20 damage to Adam. And I was a little skeptical of it. We're going to see now whether or not he's able to do it.
Yeah, there are not enough creatures, really, in this matchup for the Scavenging Ooze math to matter.
Yeah, I mean, the creatures are all on Adam's side. Basically, Scavenging Ooze is a really good play. Once he gets Wrathed, then, okay, yeah, then a Scavenging Ooze is a pretty good card.
4 mana. for Olivia Voldaren.
Yeah, it looks like he has more than one of them, so this is the test spell, Olivia Voldaren.
Thomas does have one of the Snapcaster Mages in hand.
So with that Syncopate and the Snapcaster Mage, we know he has at least 2 more counter spells.
Syncopate for 3 is going to successfully exile this Olivia.
So yeah, no food for Scavenging Ooze.
Exactly right. It's very important that, that the Scavenging Ooze doesn't get any bigger. Adam is going to draw yet another card with his Underworld connections. And Scavenging Ooze in for 3.
Yep, Adam, I don't think he has to be worried yet. He really, for this Restoration Angel to kill him, he's got to get counterspelled out of the game.
Yeah,
and
this is gonna have to turn into a Delver-like plan for Thomas to just have counterspell after counterspell after counterspell after tempo play, Azorius Charm You, those kind of things.
Yeah.
For the rest of the game.
And the thing is if you want to play around that, it's not that you want to stop hitting yourself with Underworld connections. What you want to do is just try to play more spells.
Yes.
So Underworld, like even in that situation, you still want to tap the Underworld connections.
Thomas doesn't have a ton of life himself. He is on 14 against a deck that has a ton of fireballs in it, and one of them is uncounterable in the form of Kessig Wolfrun. So we'll see what he's able to do. Another copy of Fireball, this one Rakdos Return, the combination Mind Twist Fireball, does reside in Adam's hand.
Normally Rakdos' Return is, the trump here. Adam's life total being low is starting to become pretty relevant. He doesn't have any of that hard removal left.
Yeah, he took out all the hard removal, and now with an Angel in play, it might be difficult for him to deal with the 3/4 flyer, the sudden clock.
Well, it looks like he's going to try to bait another counterspell with this Olivia Voldaren. I think the real prize is this Thragtusk in his hand. That's what he actually wants to have resolve. So he's going to first, looks like, go for an Olivia, see if he can get it countered.
Well, the Olivia has to get countered because it'll immediately grow to a 4/4.
Right. So it gets Essence Scattered. That means Thomas actually does have enough counterspells to play the counter every spell game. But because that wasn't syncopated, Adam will get a life off it.
Yeah. And that life will turn immediately into a card, most certainly.
Yeah, and he's going to go ahead, eat it with the Scavenging Ooze.
So Thomas will go to 10, Adam will go to 9.
Yeah, it's actually pretty close here. You have to think Thomas has an Azorius Charm or some way to reset it, but if he doesn't, this might actually... It's a question of which way the race will actually go.
Yeah. And Adam is going to draw a card off of Underworld Connections.
That's the 5th card of the game he's drawn off Underworld Connections.
Yeah, if I could pay 3 mana and 5 life, I'd draw 5 cards.
Yeah, that seems pretty good.
That's a pretty fair rate, I would say. Proving its worth against these blue-white control decks. You don't see it come in a whole bunch outside of the Jund Mirror.
Yeah.
But very good against these blue control decks. So, end of turn, Thomas Johnson flashed in a Snapcaster
he just
Mage
ambush vipered
just as an ambush viper to drop Adam to 3.
Yeah, definitely on the aggressive plan. If he has another counterspell, I really like this. That makes the Restoration Angel lethal this turn.
He has Thragtusk and Scavenging Ooze in hand, so unless Thomas can counter both of these and remove them both with Dissipate and
it has to be a Dissipate or a Syncopate. And if you're Thomas, I believe, does he have a shock land? I think he might shock himself down to 1 before casting Thragtusk. It's close. Depends how much mana. If he can make himself Syncopate proof, it's probably worth it. We'll see.
Now, I think Thomas has used 2 Syncopates already.
Okay, so he does have 3 post-board, correct?
Yes. Plus the Snapcaster Mages.
Yeah, I don't think he can make himself Syncopate proof. He can make himself Syncopate. No, Syncopate Snapcaster still just doesn't work. So I don't think he's really gaining any equity by playing that fetch land.
So, deciding whether or not he wants to lead with another bait spell, deciding the Thragtusk is just going to be the way to go and Dissipate immediately from Thomas's hand.
Thomas just has the wall of counterspells here. That looks like it's going to be enough. One question is whether or not Mancuso has kept in anything like Tragic Slip. Granted, he didn't actually have the black mana, so he can't draw to it. I don't think... He may have kept in... Yeah, if he had kept in a Dreadbore, he could try to draw to it right now.
Now, Mancuso has the remaining 2 Farseeks in his deck in his hand, in addition to Rakdos' Return, Stomping Ground, and Scavenging Ooze. And so, looking at just those cards, it looks like it's going to be a little bit tough for him to try to get out of this one.
Yeah.
So he's going to do that, going down to 2 to draw a card.
So if he draws Dreadbore, he's going to really regret the fact that he didn't keep a black open.
Yep. Let's see what it was. Looks like it was a Bonfire.
That's not going to do it. I think this should be lethal here.
I think that was bonfire.
All right.
So Thomas Johnson able to win despite the flood of cards that came out of the Underworld Connections.
Yeah, it's very unusual that a Jump player draws 6 cards off an Underworld Connections and doesn't win the game, but that's exactly how it played out here.
Yeah, and that's exactly how it has to play out in order for him to lose that game, is that Thomas has to reassign his role from strict control into a tempo sort of counter, like a Delver deck or counter slivers or something like that,
Yeah.
to immediately switch roles and be able to take advantage of the life total.
Yeah, well, really, it was 1 Restoration Angel with a hand of, I think, Syncopate, Essence Scatter, Dissipate, Snapcaster Mage. So, like, 1 Restoration Angel and 5 counterspells to back it up turned out to be too much for Mancuso to deal with.
Yep, and the Snapcaster Mage actually didn't end up being a counterspell. It just ended up being more damage.
Right, so, I mean, he debated out, he got the Snapcaster Mage out. He actually baited out a first Syncopate with a Farseek, but the other 3 counterspells were still too much.
Yep, way too many counterspells there for the blue-white